We're on. Welcome to the Athletes Health Podcast here, talking to athletes, coaches, leaders, anyone we can learn some tips, tricks, tools from in that mental game, mental performance side, and ultimately just help our overall performance, have some fun while winning too. Today, I want to do something kind of special, something funny. I think we'll see how it goes, but I'd ask a friend, someone also getting into the professional space of Trey Wodke to hop on here with me. And Trey, introduce yourself here for a brief moment, kind of what you want to tell people about yourself. And then I got some questions for you, but then we're going to do something fun here. I think this will be pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to be on here. I'm happy to help out and have a conversation with you on here. My name's Trey Wodke. I've been friends with Gabe for quite a while now. I think going back to daycare, like elementary age. So I've known Gabe for a long time. And yeah, went to University of Northern Iowa for undergrad. And now I'm going to the University of Briar Cliff out in Sioux City, Iowa, right there in the tri-state area for physical therapy school. And just about done with that. It's been a good time. Going to start clinical rotations here pretty soon in the summer. So got another spring of school left. But yeah, it's been a good time.
And so
I'd also like to say that I am.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, I think I know where you might be going with this.
No, go ahead.
I am the champion of Gabe's Fantasy Football League. I am the champion. It'd be bad if I didn't say something about that, but yes. So
Why don't you show the belt? Why don't you show the belt fast since you're bringing that up?
I wasn't going to show it.
Show the belt.
I wasn't going to show it.
Hey,
there
look!
It is.
Look at what the other
I'll
names.
I'll show the back.
Look at the other names on
there. Yep. Where's it at? Yep, Gabe.
Oh, Team Grummel.
Gabe's the next champion.
There it is.
You know what they say? You can't live in the past. I'm the present champion, and that's what matters.
Mm-hmm. All right, Trey. I'm glad you brought that up. Got it out of the way. That's good.
I'd like to shout you out though. You had a good week this week. 170 points. I think that's the most I saw this year. So.
Yeah, I mean, my team we were just we weren't. I had some injuries, some buys, and everyone's back, ready to perform. I got to get out of the poop bowl. We'll call it. Right now, I'm last in the league. Lost every game besides the second week and last week, but I'm gonna make a comeback. So I have faith. I always think if Keegan can do it that 1 year, I can do it. So, anyways,
no time like the present. Get after it.
Exactly. But I want to point something out too. What you said, yeah, Trey. When I first moved to Cedar Rapids in third grade, you were probably one of the first people I met. So yeah, we do go back quite a while. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing before we get into, because I'll just tell people right now, we're going to tie mental performance, PT, being your best self, winning with some scary movies, Halloween special. Going to be awesome. But Trey, I wanted to ask you, get your viewpoints, because you really have gone through it now. Like, because I obviously, and people know, I went to school for like kinesiology and dietetics, and the kinesiology programs, there's a lot of people who go pre-PT and then they either switch out, they just don't graduate, or they, yeah, I mean, that's always what they think. They're going into school right away and they're like, pre-PT, but you've actually gone through it. I don't know the exact percentages of who starts out in that and actually gets through it, but like you said, you're almost done and you're getting into the rotation soon. What was your whole philosophy or like thought of getting into PT first and foremost, and like you almost got all the way through it up to this point? So
yeah, it's something I'm glad I stuck with. If I'm going to be honest with you, I was probably one of those guys that's going in there and almost probably did get out of going on like the physical therapy track. I remember like a biomedical sales position was kind of being flaunted around at UNI, and I was kind of considering that at the time that I was applying. It might have been when I was waiting to hear back. That's also a pretty long wait period, like waiting to see if you even get in. So I would say like even at the start of undergrad too, I was kind of wish-washy about it, but it's definitely something I'm glad I stuck with. It's certainly a profession I could see myself enjoying for like long term, being in it until you retire sort of thing. Like without mentioning like the money aspect of it, I feel like it's rewarding. You get to see people get better. You got a lot of areas that you can enter in the physical therapy field, and so if like you get burnt out in one area, you can always go try to get into a different area, or there's a lot of different opportunities there.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty cool to hear you say that you have enjoyed it and you see yourself enjoying it nonetheless as it keeps going. What part about it like I'm honestly curious about this. What part do you like the most of doing of because now you practice some in like clinics, like you've been, it's not just education that you've been actually like out there doing it too. So what parts do you like the most about it?
As far as like probably the physical therapy education aspect at Briar Cliff, we have a pro bono clinic and it's completely student ran, so we get a lot of say in what we do and how things are ran. It's a great opportunity. We get to see like up to two patients a night. We're partnered with another student who's we're also in class with every day, so we get to get along with our classmates pretty well, and we get to problem solve and do like the evaluation. We get to see the patient for the first time, kind of try to figure out what's wrong, do all the tests and all the measures we learned in class, and get to like an idea of what we think is their diagnosis, how we can treat them. Writing the soap note, we get to do that, and a lot. I feel like something I've learned as time's gone on throughout my education career is that it's really important for me to like apply what I learn in the classroom. Otherwise, I'm just not going to really care about it. But as soon as I get that opportunity where I get to see the effects of something we learned, like with my own eyes because of something I did, that usually sticks with me a lot longer than just like slides and taking notes and flashcards, that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely say just getting to work right away at Briar Cliff has been cool. I think that's what your question kind of was. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully I answered that.
Yeah, no, I was just curious what you liked so much about just the PT stuff, and I mean, obviously the education, but I didn't know about that program of how you're actually like working with people like in that sense and actually applying it. I was just talking to a like freshman athlete that I was coaching, and we weren't talking about season as much. We were talking about some school stuff, and I just bring this up because I think the cross, and I do believe this of like performance, like putting your best foot out there and using the mental side of it to get ready, crosses so much to the education piece and just the life piece. As I'm sure now, like you said, the soap notes, like just summaries and talking to people as you're in the clinics and stuff. That's pretty cool to hear. One thing I really wanted to get your opinion on, because I wanted to hear if this had any drive for you or whatnot, because you love the research, and because we talk about research a lot, and I was curious if you could share, and I know you don't, I don't even know if you know the actual causes or not, but you've had some injuries yourself, which I don't know if those kind of drove you into thinking maybe PT or not. But if you want to break that down a little bit, because it's kind of crazy what you've gone through, if I'm being honest. And I think it helps relate to like people you are helping in the clinic and everything around the sense.
Okay, so are you talking about like my whole knee
Yeah,
injury and getting knee
your knee
surgery and all that?
stuff.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So like I feel like I always kind of had issues like with my left knee growing up and never really could pinpoint like a specific injury that happened. It's just something that I kind of learned to deal with and kind of cope with, and never really like made a big deal about it until like I don't know, like high school, and you start really noticing it more. Like you're growing into your body more, and your practices are getting more intense and weightlifting and stuff. And I was noticing a lot of sharp pains in my knee. Like I'd get into like a certain like amount of like knee flexion, or like take a certain amount of load, I guess, say it like that, and it would cause like a real sharp shooting pain, and I'd have to quickly like reposition. And so finally went and got it looked at, and it appeared I had some like cartilage degradation over time. So essentially, it was like bone on bone because you have cartilage between your bones, and but once that cartilage is gone, you just get a lot of bone on bone, and that's not good because bone's not supposed to contact bone; it's the cartilage that's supposed to contact. So that's where all the pain was coming from. And so initially, I went in, and I also like to say this was all around this about January. I think I had my scope. So they initially scoped my knee, went in. Doctor was gonna just screw down what he could so that it would kind of promote healing. And he went in there and said that like all the cartilage in there was essentially dust. So they came out, did nothing on that surgery basically. But I still had to go through about 4 to 6 weeks of recovery. I want to say just on crutches. Not even recovery, honestly, just kind of waiting. Because at that point, I was gonna wait for cadaver cartilage or like live cartilage cells from someone that's died. And so I was kind of waiting for that. Things were not really picking up fast as they could have been, I felt like. And so we got to about February. It was around Valentine's Day. I got in and had a partial knee replacement, had that put in. That was quite the experience for sure. But I'd say I'd probably say I'm now grateful to have had that experience, because I got to be a patient that went through physical therapy, went through a surgery, understood like how like honestly depressing surgery can be. Like going from like myself, I like to go out, be active, go to the gym. I like to work a lot. We worked at FedEx together, so I couldn't do that, and that was really hard to just not do much and just sit there. That was so getting through that was something that was tough in the moment, but I'm glad I went through it, because now I can relate to people I'll be working with in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Was that the only knee surgery you had, or was the scope technically a surgery too? 'Cause I just feel like I remembered that you had a knee surgery and then like you had to do it again, or I might be totally wrong.
Kind of cut out there. Did you just ask if the scope was considered a surgery?
Yeah, I was just saying I didn't remember, because for some reason I was thinking that maybe you had two knee surgeries, but maybe the scope was technically maybe one of the
Yeah.
surgeries. Like later on, you have to do it again or something.
No, those two. Yeah, so I had the scope in January, and then I had to wait like 4 or 5 weeks or something, and they finally got in there. Had someone's knee cartilage ready for me and got put in there, and honestly, that was good timing, because then March came around and they weren't doing like any necessary surgeries there for a while since COVID was ramping up.
Oh yeah,
It was pretty
yeah,
good timing.
crazy times. Holy cow. Yeah, no, that works out pretty
Yeah.
well then, I guess. Well, that's cool, because I mean, that's what I was just getting at. Like, I mean, then I think that's just one great story to build a relationship, rapport with people you're working with. And I think it's pretty cool to talk about too. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like, it's one thing to have knee issues and pains due to like tightness or whatever the case is, or maybe you're just like trying to tough it out. But then it's another thing to have your cartilage be dust, bone on bone. Crazy.
Yep.
But
Pretty silly to think about now that I got all the education I do now.
that you got all the what?
Just that it's kind of silly to think I let it go on for that long, at
Oh
like
yeah,
having
but
the
I mean,
education I got now.
yeah, with the education you have now, because
Yeah,
at that time you don't know about it though, right? So
right.
I mean, you're
But
just
that's good, because now it's like I know that the people I'm working with might not know what's going on either. So it's good to break it down for them and kind of explain the why behind things.
exactly. It just kind of makes your drive a little bit more. We all have some type of drive, which is what I find so cool. And so I'm gonna bring up the movies now, but before I do this, I wanted to just also say why I thought I wanted to talk about this with you is because I know you like novels, like I know you love to read too, and so I think this will just be pretty fun to talk about with you. I think because I know we watched a lot of scary movies throughout the time, nonetheless. But I have like 4 movies. We might break it down to 5 if we have time. We'll see how much we go in. But honestly, here I'm just thinking we're gonna kind of go through the plot, relate it to either PT, relate it to mental performance, relate it to sports, whatever the case is, and see what happens. First movie I had is Halloween. I'm going to introduce the movies fast. Back from technical difficulties. We're just going to tie some stories together around this. So I think we're going to dive in with Halloween. I got a couple different movies that we're going to talk about, but Halloween is one. I think that's a classic. We're going to go with It, probably, Scream, and The Conjuring. We'll take those for some spins, see where the conversation goes. You ready, Trey?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Halloween. I mean, for all these, we're going to be talking about like unpredictability, fear, anxiety, isolation, determination. I mean, the list of mental performance can go on and on and on. And some PTs I've talked to too, like in my local area, they think the connection of PT to mental side of stuff is pretty huge. And I mean, even when you were recollecting some of the thoughts that you went through, like you said, when you can't do the stuff you usually do, like that's isolating and it's different from what you want to do. Let's talk about Halloween fast. I'm just thinking first scene off the bat, and Trey, we'll just walk through scene by scene. I think we're going to just start laughing and stuff, but they're in the mental asylum, and this kid, he doesn't speak. He doesn't speak for since he kills his sister, right?
Very first scene of wait, which Halloween are we talking about?
We're talking about original Halloween. He kills his sister. He doesn't speak
Original
after that.
Halloween?
Yeah, he kills
Oh,
his
okay.
sister.
You're going right past the first scene. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Well, no.
Yeah. He has a
Well, we
speed.
can talk about the first scene.
Oh,
What do you think we should talk about in the first scene? That brings up a
I don't
good
know.
point.
I just thought the first scene was like a good shock factor. Like, you just kind of like you're in the POV of the killer. It's the only time I believe you're in the POV of the killer, and just kind of watching the scene unfold. It's a brutal murder, and then lo and behold, it's little Michael. It's kind of. I just thought it was too fun to talk about the shock value there.
Shock value,
But yeah,
as in
no,
no. I like it. I like it. So what? Elaborate more on this shock value here, just for a second. I have some ideas behind it, but like, what do you mean by it?
yeah, for sure. I'm more so thinking from the perspective of the viewer shock value because you watch this whole scene unfold and you kind of assume you see it's someone that she knows. She screams out Michael, so it's like, oh, it might be her. Maybe it's her dad. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's her boyfriend. And you watch her get killed, and then next thing you know, you see the parents of the girl who got murdered pulled up, and they don't seem alarmed or anything. They just saw someone holding a bloody knife, but they're not alarmed by anything. And then it flips to him. It's a little boy holding a bloody knife. I just think that's very shocking and a very creative thing to do in such an old film. I feel like it's
Dude, I agree. This is exactly why I
yeah.
wanted you to do this with me, Trey. That's such a good viewpoint, and I'm just thinking about this. Would you say that could even relate to like I'm thinking people are watching sports on TV and stuff. You're not actually through the lens of the people competing. Like those people competing are seeing someone totally different. They've done different things leading up to there. I don't know what is in Michael's brain that makes him do this stuff, but I mean, that's a whole nother edge. And I think that's one aspect to think about this is the people you're watching,
You
or even
know,
like, go ahead.
no, I was kind of build off what you're saying. It's kind of like a good message. Like don't underestimate anybody.
That's true.
Especially your opponent.
And I was just thinking,
Yeah,
especially in the kind of youth space of athletics, when it's all getting more competitive and more intense and stuff. But don't underestimate what you're looking at. I mean, people can have skills that you don't understand, and they'll tell you're playing each other, and you're like, "Holy cow, that's crazy!" And you don't even see it, just like that knife. Great
yeah,
first scene. Great first scene because you're not seeing the eyes of what they're doing. Great
yeah.
work,
Little
Trey.
boy in front of you, he could be a killer. You never know. Don't underestimate him.
I think it just goes back to your PT too. I'm obviously not the one through the practice, but with each person you have in, you don't know their perspectives that they're going through. You start to figure it out as you build that rapport, and that's the same with anyone you're working with life too. But you don't really understand it, and that's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Let's go to now let's go to the next scene here. Mental asylum. Kid's not talking
Yeah,
forever.
yeah.
Being scared of this guy. I'm just thinking right off the bat. I'm thinking like you're walking into your performance place and this sport, obviously, whatever field you're on, court, but it could be also like a presentation or anything like that. You're thinking, dude, this guy's crazy. This team's crazy. Like they don't even say a word. They are cool, quite literally what they say in sports, cool collective killer. And I mean, that's what I'm seeing right away off of that scene. And then he comes down and he jumps on the car. You're not expecting that. I don't know. It's kind of a crazy scene personally, but
Yeah. No, I like what you're saying. It kind of, if we want to draw a comparison to sports here, he kind of reminds me of like a Nikola Jokic type. That's just all about his business. Like Nikola Jokic is going to go out there and he's going to try to kill that team, just like Michael Myers isn't going to say much. He's not going to make it like sparkle or anything, but he'll get the job done and he's a killer. You know.
he is. And I think your Jokic thing is even a better comparison because you don't expect, if we're putting all the stories together here, you don't expect Jokic to be a
Yeah.
baller. If anyone who doesn't know,
He's not your
yeah,
stereotypical athlete at all. No.
exactly. If you don't know who Jokic is, look him up. Look up some highlight videos. They're going to be circus videos of this guy, but it's pretty funny. And that's kind of what you have with Michael. The lady in the car was like, what do we have to be scared of? We don't have to do anything. And the doc's
Yeah,
like, be scared of this guy. That's exactly Jokic, honestly. That's what people think of him.
yeah. Well, he's a second round pick too. He was what picked during a Taco Bell ad. Like no one was taking this guy serious, and now
Yeah.
look at him. He's
He,
one of the guys, you know.
he was putting in the work, putting in all those reps to get good, to be the basketball player he is. And it's kind of like Michael Myers was putting in the reps of the mental asylum of just thinking and getting ready for his
I got
moment.
another one for you.
Let's hear it. Let's
He
go.
was getting he's in that mental asylum getting countless mental reps, all these kills. That's why he was such a honed killer. He was that's all he was thinking about. He's locked in.
He was visualizing it the whole time, wasn't he?
Huh? Those are reps, dude. Those are serious reps.
No, they are. And
Mental practice.
that's why I wanted to do this so bad, because we're going to connect so many different things here. We're definitely not going to get through all the movies, but that's okay. We'll pick and pop through them. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
He hops in the car. He's driving to the town. It's Halloween, or it's Halloween Eve. What do you think the next scene we should dissect here on this? Because now it starts to pan to the people, to the other people in the movie. So we don't always have to talk about
Yeah,
movie
for sure.
podcasts.
I feel like once we get to that point, yeah, we're starting to meet Laurie Strode and all her friends, and throughout that whole like probably 20 some minutes, you always see Michael kind of lurking in the background. You have that scene where Michael runs into her little brother, and it's like it's the building action of the scene for sure. You know that there's some tension building, and
I was gonna say it's
just kind
kind
of
of like
twisting that.
you're watching your goals get closer and closer. Michael's just getting closer and closer. He's putting in the work. He's behind the scenes. No one else notices. The one doc that's probably like your one believer who's like, watch out for this guy. Watch out for this killer. He's coming. No one else even believes. Everyone else is laughing. But then we have the cinematic pieces behind it actually showing he is getting closer and closer, and no one else is even seeing it.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite things about Halloween is it's not one of your like nowadays special effects predominate a lot of things, and Halloween's like one of those films where like you see people get killed, but it's not any special gore or anything. It's like a lot of creativity in how the scenes are shot and like where's Michael at in this scene. What's like he's doing the same thing in every scene, and it's still each one gets creepier and creepier somehow. So that's one of my favorite things about that.
Yeah,
Probably aspect of the movie.
the guy doesn't even talk. And
Yeah.
he doesn't even really pop up. It's not like they're like scary pop-ups most of the time. It's just what you just said. It's really good directory, honestly. And I was just thinking more about that in even a PT sense of like not even PT, but just recovery of maybe an injury, because injuries obviously are really bad. But you kind of have to do the work. You have to do some of those subtle exercises to get better before you even kind of like see yourself getting better. Like you have to kind of trust it, trust the couple weeks to see the results and start to actually make it happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And then even on the physical therapy side, like you gotta be creative too. That's why I appreciate the creativity of the director. Is like he's something that a lot of people gotta do. They gotta like put their own creativity in their own field. Like for physical therapy, I might have to like adapt something to meet someone else's standards because they don't have a capability. You know, like right now I'm in neuro and we do a lot of we did a lot of we did spinal cord injury, and there's a lot of different things you have to take into consideration depending on like at what level the spinal cord injury occurred at, and so just getting creative with that and making sure you're taking a lot of things into accountability, and just pretty interesting. I don't know, I kind of got off topic.
No, that's not off topic because I'm just tying. I might be skipping some scenes here, but we'll see what happens. I'm thinking
Yeah, for sure, we
now
got lots of
to
movies.
what?
I said for sure we got lots of movies.
I'm
Who
thinking
cares?
now, when they're in the house and the kid, I forget his name, but he's yelling the boogeyman. The boogeyman's over, like he sees him across the house. Let's say for like
Yeah,
PT or not even PT, but for like just any instance, I'm just thinking of this where like you are thinking something, or maybe you want to do something, or something's not feeling the best, but everyone's like, you're fine, dude. You're okay. Get through it. But then like neuro, and I'm not the biggest expert on it. I mean, I was in the neuro lab for a while, but some of that does not always present itself right away, or it presents itself in different ways. And I'm just thinking on the court, like people have different skill sets or in any sport, and maybe some days you have it, some days you don't. And like it's one thing to be like, dude, I'm not feeling it today. And everyone's like, what do you mean? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's kind of like he's just saying the boy who cried wolf, and then it can kind of stack. And I'm thinking in PT world, that's when that injury, and now maybe neuro, because you could explain one of those, but like shin splint. Hey, this is bad. Boom, stress fracture. You're done. And then, I mean, there's so many different sides in the mental game where this could relate to. But that's kind of one perspective I had on that scene before everything really ramps up.
Yeah, so I would certainly say, like, understanding when mind over matters, when, like, there's always a time for mind over matter, but then, like, your example with shin splints leading to stress fractures, that's for sure, like, what would happen. Like, shin splints are a sign that you've ramped up your training too fast, and you need to back it up and make sure you put in the diligence of, like, ramping up your training how you're supposed to be, so you're not putting too much stress on the muscle and the bone to the point where it does break. So for sure, being able, like, that is a pretty valuable skill. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. It's kind of knowing when to, like, be like, oh, I got to lock in and push through pain, and then like understanding when pain is some like a sign that you need to stop.
Yeah, I didn't know exactly what I was getting at, but that's a great way to articulate it. And that ties into one of the next scenes, or the whole kind of just last trilogy piece, third of the movie, of Michael just going on a silent rampage. And like, I kind of had this perspective of like, it is his drive. Like there's nothing stopping him. And if we just take it to what we were just talking about, I mean, he's going, he's getting hit, he's doing other things, but he is just silently chasing, dude, and nothing is stopping him. Like the stress fracture, he doesn't care. He's going.
Yeah. No, yeah, this is. I like what you're getting at here. He's a resilient character. Michael Myers is, and but like you never find out why. Like I'm trying to think right now. Like throughout the whole franchise, they never really get into his backstory. They never get into why he has that like power. Like even like Friday the 13th, like Jason Voorhees, you get like background on like why he has all those powers, like why he can't die. But Michael Myers, he's just a guy. You just gotta understand he's resilient, and there's not much you can do about it. And sometimes you might go against like somebody like in the sport realm. You might have that like big image in your mind where he's a Michael Myers type figure that no matter what you do, he's still gonna get the best of you. And I mean, you could like look at him like that, or you could be like Laurie Strode and just keep fighting. You know, I see what you're getting at with that, dude.
I see what you just wrapped it up with. That is I think that's a
Yeah.
pretty good way to conclude it, because that's the other piece too. Like in the athletic world and even just performing at your peak, ultimately, sometimes you never know why something happened and you just gotta take it. And like with the whole series, and I think that is also what makes Halloween such a good series, not just the first movie we're talking about, but the whole series, where like you never truly know. Like that kind of is what makes it also so good. Like,
Yeah.
here's this.
Yeah, I would like to say I'm not a fan of the newest three they made. I thought they were kind of a cash grab,
Yeah,
little cheeseball but action. But other ones I liked a lot. Yeah,
the
you
newer
want to get
ones.
into?
The newer ones I only watched like once or twice.
Honestly, they kind of triggered me. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of upset, but that's okay.
All right, Halloween. That's a wrap. That was awesome. This is exactly why I want to do it with you and not by myself. Hey, thanks again for tuning into the Athlete's Health Podcast. Your support really does mean a lot. We are passionate about bringing the mental health and performance topics to the forefront because, let's be real, the mental health crisis is a huge issue in society. Now, if you're enjoying the show, it would mean the world to us if you could just give it a 5-star review and share it with anyone who might benefit this message. Every bit helps in spreading the word and creating a stronger, healthier community. This podcast is just a small part of what we are doing at the Athlete's Health. We work directly with teams, coaches, and individual athletes even to help them unlock their full mental performance and ultimately overall performance. Now, whether that's getting the competitive edge, breaking through mental blocks, or just leveling up in the mental gym. We're trying to cover it all with people. So thank you for listening and supporting our mission. Now let's get right back to the show. Number 2 that I wanted to use was The Shining. This is a classic. It is a little bit different than Stephen King's novel, but that's all right. We'll go off of the movie. More people have probably seen the movie than the novel. Where do you think we start with this, Trey? And how to? I mean, I have an overall theme of just kind of isolation, and it's okay to isolate at some respect, but and I think it's honestly beneficial at some respect. But then to some extent, it's not good. Clearly, from The Shining, but there's a lot of more hidden messages in the movie too. But where do you think we start? Take it for a spin. You're the expert.
It kind of starts out with Jack and Jack Torrance at the Overlook, the Overlook Hotel, getting interviewed. Not much going on there.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that movie in a while, but I don't know. I feel like if you
listen to this one, I'm thinking he starts with the interview and he's like, "Hey, this is what we could be doing. This is what you're to expect. Hey, but this happened in the past of this place." And Jack's like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. Like we'll be good. This is gonna be a great spot for me to write, even though he's a bad writer in all the sense." But I'm thinking that could be the same as like talking to a coach, talking to a boss, talking to anyone, where you're sitting down, talking to them, and you have an expectation. You gotta be clear with what you want. Like this is kind of on the back end side of the sports and athletics and performing stuff, but you can't kind of just get walked over. And he's not getting walked over, but he's also like, it's almost like he wants this stuff and that's why it's working. But I'm just putting it in another perspective of maybe you have these meetings and it's not what you want. It's something to just make sure you are going into the meeting with prepared. It's kind of one way to look at it.
I don't know. After like I've read the book, right? I've seen the movie quite a bit, and like I don't know. When I watch that opening scene, like I watch it differently than like the first time I saw it. It's like you're watching this guy kind of sign up for a job that he seems real eager to do, and it doesn't sound that great. Honestly, you're confined to a big hotel with nobody. You're snowed in. Like you don't get to go anywhere. I mean, he has his wife and kid, but I mean, to me, it almost seems like he's going for like almost an ulterior motive, and like it's like he knows he's like so almost subconsciously ready to spiral, and he's ready to just kind of get it over with, sort of thing.
Let me ask you this: did you think that the first time you watched it, or you have that perspective after seeing it a couple times?
I'd say definitely after seeing it a couple times. I feel like Jack Nicholson is the actor. I think it is.
I think so.
And he's a really good actor. And I feel like a lot of older movies, there's like a lot of things they do intentionally that you don't really pick up on until you have kind of been exposed to the story and thought about it for a bit. So I feel like definitely he might have like put a little look in his eye, like, oh yeah, I'm about to nothing's good's gonna come of this, and I'm ready for it, like sort of thing.
That's also a pretty good perspective, and I think from the view, the audience side, and to relate that into things like the first time you do something, like this is in a movie sense, how you said all kind of old movies, like you catch more things the second time. First time you do it, like first time you were probably with a patient, it's something. It goes, it's like, okay. But then the more you do it, the more you realize, the more you pick up, the better you get at it too. Which is something sometimes people think about. Sometimes it honestly goes over people's head. Like they're like, this is my first time, I should be crushing it. But it evolves as it goes.
Yeah, and it's hard kind of first time doing something, knowing what you're supposed to be looking out for, like things to key in on. But yeah, just like the more you do anything, the more you're going to be better at it.
Yeah. And the first time watching a movie is going to be a total different perspective than the other times, if it's one of those movies.
Sure.
Jordan Peele movies, those would be a similar circumstance, but we don't have to go there.
Yeah, I appreciate that guy. He's a creative guy.
So let's see. Then they give a little backstory. I don't know if there's many lessons from that, but then they start driving the car. They're driving there. I mean, I guess we could always talk about the kid with his red rum. Not even his red rum, but his friend. Is it Tony? Is that it? I forget the finger's name. But his friend, that's...
Tony sounds right. It's Tony or Toby or something like that for sure.
I'm just thinking about it because I read a stat somewhere, and the stat is pretty prevalent that it's like 1 in 3 or almost 50% of the population actually doesn't know about like a voice inside their head. And it's crazy. I mean, I think when you talk to them about it, then they can start to realize it and they might notice it. But off the bat, they don't actually know that's happening. And I know obviously the finger voice and everything is a little different thing from the movie, but it also protects him and like kind of almost guides him throughout the movie. And that's almost the intuition, man. I mean, that's almost like your thought of making things happen or like that inner voice. Sometimes it is good to listen to it. Sometimes it's not good. I think
Yeah,
in other sorts of the movie, it probably wasn't the best, but kind of get what I mean on that one.
yeah, for sure. It's like it was always like an unsettling thing at the start. Like when you're watching the movie, you're like, "Oh, this kid's just kind of odd." But then as the movie goes on, you kind of like. I mean, I don't want to spoil like the whole red rum aspect without. So I'll try to talk around it, but you go out throughout the whole movie and you start to realize, okay, maybe this kid was onto something, and it's like kind of a good parallel you can make is like your gut reaction, like just listening to your gut on something. And I feel like that's kind of a good example. Like it wasn't like a gut, like it was his shining ability that he had, and that some people had in that movie universe. But that's kind of how I look at that. It's
No,
pretty interesting because if they just had listened to taking the time maybe to be like, hey, what's going on, Danny? Like maybe you could have explained he had some bad ideas about this hotel or something. They probably wouldn't have listened to him, but
no, they wouldn't have.
that's a good reason why you should always like take the time to talk to someone and kind of figure out what's going on and get down to their level too, though. So,
Exactly. And it doesn't matter kind of their age. I mean, because he had a lot of good points throughout the movie that they should have listened to. Exactly what you're saying to get down to the people's level. And I was just thinking too, necessarily with the voice and head, but like you can take that to two spins. I'm thinking of like people who are going to rehab or recovery. Like they might have two different perspectives, and I'm sure you've ran across this some too, that some people are like they're probably like, oh dude, like this is gonna suck. I gotta go through all this stuff and yada yada. That's one shining, and the other one there's that internal dialogue. The other one would be like, we're getting better. We're gonna come back stronger. I mean, I'm gonna do all the things right, and so I just see that as another little way to look at it to stay more positive, I guess, in a horror movie per se.
yeah, for sure. I feel like I can build on that in regards to the dad. The dad, see throughout the movie, kind of see him spiral, lose kind of control. He's struggling with his writing. He's starting to bounce back onto his alcoholic tendencies. If I recall right, I don't think he was drinking at the time that they'd gone to the hotel, and then he picked it back up.
Yeah,
Started seeing like
I think he
the
was sober for a
ghosts.
while. I think he was
Yep,
sober.
yep. But yeah, then like he kind of like forgot about like why he was doing the job was for his family. He started neglecting his family, and like you could kind of see where he was intrinsically motivated. He was intrinsically motivated by alcohol. Like I feel like that's why he kind of subconsciously took the job anyway, because he knew he'd be isolated and driven to the point to drink, like driven mad, and then it's like nothing else to do. Like, all what is it? All work and no play make Jack a dull boy is what they say in that movie. So it's kind of interesting. It's good to make sure what you're doing is intrinsically motivated, because intrinsic motivation is always going to be a stronger motivator than any extrinsic motivators.
That's a good point, and that point you could spin that to be even those intrinsic motivators can potentially be like good motivators and bad motivators. Like, are
Hell
you
yeah,
like you're saying basically he partly took that because he was intrinsically motivated to drink and then to kind of almost spiral out of control too? Because we're saying he initially had the talk and he had that little glisten in his eye that he wanted it, but so that's probably what you're saying, and I'll relate on this after I finish this because then there's also so that'd be like a bad one, but then there's also like good motivators. And I'm just thinking maybe like even for the mom, she's like, well, maybe this will be really good for you and your writing and it'll help us out. And like, that's almost a internal motivator that everything will be better for us. But so I almost say you could have those two motivators in life and sports too, to be honest.
yeah, for sure. I'm glad you bring up the mom. The actress's name, I want to look it up, is Shelley Duvall. I just wanted to hit on some of the crazy. I don't know if you've ever heard about the craziness she had to go through when filming that movie.
I was just going to talk about it. Yeah, talk about it. Talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, it would be a disservice to the listeners to not talk about her
It's
because she
insane.
went through some crazy stuff. I'm not too sure on like the specifics, but I just know it was a really like hostile environment for her. They tried to keep her really high strung, really tense and anxious because her character was going to be going through a lot of tense and anxious scenes. Like you go back and watch that scene of her on the stairs with the knife, like that's not acting. Like they put her into a state, like got her so wound up to that point. Because I'm pretty sure she had like fallout from that, like had struggled with her like mental health after that for like years.
Well, yeah, if we want to talk about real life, that scene that you're talking about, they did that like 50 times at least or something. I
Yeah.
don't want to throw random numbers
Hmm.
out there, but
No.
yeah, they made it so she was actually like like you said, not acting. That is such a crazy fact to bring out. So like honestly, if we're talking about real life stuff, obviously because we were using like the stories of the movies and relating it to life and performance, but like talk about keeping your cool in an actual high pressure situation, a situation where you are pretty anxious on the court, on the field, isolated one on one. Watch that scene and notice some ways to get out of it, maybe not the best ways, but that's crazy to
Yeah.
bring up.
Well, and kind of bringing it back, I know you've hit on this too in the podcast before, just kind of understanding what kind of performer you are and understanding what environment you perform best in, what like emotional state you perform best at. That's always important to do, and being mindful of that and reflecting on that after performance, like what went well and went bad.
Mm-hmm. Let's no, I'm glad. That's cool that you bring up old podcasts, right? That's pretty cool. um
I listen.
yeah, I know you're a true one. I'm thinking, I there's so many lessons in this movie. What about we talked about visualizing some, and this isn't necessarily visualizing, but I think this is a pretty cute, huge, big piece of visualizing. Maybe doesn't have to be like a whole movie scene or like a whole thing, but like the kid, once again, he has those snippets, and what does the other guy who has the shining ability say? Like they're not real, they're just images that are flashing in your head. Oh, you know what I'm talking about here? Where like he sees the girls flash and then they flash a little closer, but the guy's like, "Hey, it's almost like a vision for you of the past or the future. Like it's not real. They won't hurt you." But I'm thinking and visualizing because sometimes when I talk to people about it, because there's anything like even for a test, like you're saying, or like for what you had, like you can see it, but sometimes it's not seeing a whole thing. It's just seeing like a quick snippet, and even that can help sometimes. I know because I know you've done sports too, and you're obviously going through school, so like you're in the high competition of school, so like you've probably done some of this stuff, and that's a kind of big piece that I don't want to get lost in or forgot about.
Yeah, yeah. It basically is just kind of reminding them like what you're seeing is not actually there. Don't let it impact you to the point where it's impeding impeding like how you react to things, or don't do anything drastic because you're talking about those bloody twin girls, right?
Yeah,
Like the classic ones, yeah, yeah. So just kind of make sure to keep your cool, sort of thing. And imagery, as far as that, is a great way to put yourself in a situation without actually being there. Like studies really do show that getting mental reps is going to stimulate the areas of the brain that are going to be stimulated while you're doing, uh, say, you're taking batting practice. Like if you imagine hitting 1,000 balls and what you would do during that, like what you would do if it was a curveball or a changeup sort of thing, you're going to be stimulating those areas of the brain. And that's good because when you use something, you're going to improve the connections in the brain so that they're going to fire faster the next time that you go to use them. And so, yeah, imagery is definitely a great tool to use. Speaking on that,
that's perfect. And there's your baseball reference too for all your baseball years. Just to wrap that up too, as you were saying, I was thinking those flash images are also almost like a kind of some of those bad thoughts you have, or like if you are let's say baseball, and you are on the mound or you're up to hit, and like or beforehand, you have those flash images of like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? But it's just like the guy says, they're not real, dude. Just keep going. Even though in the movie's case, they are kind of real. That's all right. You got any more pieces of The Shining that we should talk about that you can think of to walk through the movie? I mean, there's so many scenes, so many good scenes. I'm trying to think of some more, but if you can think of any off the top of your head, otherwise we can move on to another movie as well. But
I just feel like that movie's a lot of fun, and talking about the ending of it just kind of makes it
exactly,
kind of ruins it, you know.
you can only
I
go.
think we move on.
We can only talk so much about it because you can't ruin the end of the movie. And good thing
maybe
we
spoil
didn't
it.
do that. So we probably try realistically. We only have probably time for one more.
Whatever you gotta.
What one would you want to talk about? I recently have watched basically all these. So The Conjuring, Scream, It. Which one would you want to bring some pieces out of? What are you thinking? Because some of them, they're all,
I feel like,
all good to watch around this time.
yeah, I feel like we don't gotta hit Stephen King again. I feel like Scream's a fun one because you got new Screams coming out yet. I feel like I haven't watched The Conjuring in a while. I think that's just a good movie though. I don't know if I'd be able to pull much from that.
All right,
but probably Scream.
We can go Scream.
There's a lot of movies from Scream too. There's a whole franchise, so
yeah, that's true. And exactly, so it's obviously doing something right. And I've watched The Conjuring so many times that we'll go with Scream. Opening scene. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, another creative opening scene. I feel
It
like
is. I think it's
feel
right
like
up there with
they got
with Michael Myers' opening scene.
right. I feel like they got some inspiration to kind of do the unexpected, not necessarily inspired by what they did in Halloween, but like what they did to the audience and like the shock value. If I remember right, if I remember right, if I read right, because Scream came out like when I was a kid, so I was paying attention to stuff. But I believe they were like marketing the movie that Drew Barrymore was going to be like the final girl, because you got like the final girl in horror movies that is like always making out at every scene. So everyone's like, "Oh, we got a new horror movie that has Drew Barrymore, a big star." But then they go ahead and kill her off in the first 10 minutes. Like that's that whole shock value again. I think that's a lot of fun.
I didn't know that. So that could almost be like in your games or whatever. You're going into it expecting something, you know. And I was gonna say something about the Bears, but I won't. I won't say anything about the Bears. But anyways,
no, we can talk about it.
I'm just thinking you're going in.
I certainly wasn't expecting that. I'll tell you that. But
I'm thinking you're going into a game expecting certain things, and then just right away, totally different. It is not what you expect. You got to rebound from that. You got to get back from it. Like, and in PT too, like you're never expecting to get the injury or whatever the case is, but you got to find some way, shape, form to get through it. And I'm sure watching that movie, if people knew, like you said, we were little, if even alive, we weren't alive. That movie that was not when we were born, right? Or was it?
shit, I feel like it was like 2005.
It might be 2005. So we would, I was thinking it was either.
So wrong. It was 1996.
I was going to say 2005 or 1995. I didn't know what year. So we were not alive.
Yeah, okay. So I was even a little boy back then. I thought.
Yeah. But I think it has so many different scenes of a shock value. And within that scene, even, there's so many different shocks of the scene. Because we're talking about macro view of the scene of how it ended. And at this point, I think we can spoil that. But even within the scene itself, so many different shock values that are just popping up. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it kind of slowly builds up the tension too, because of how it sets up the scene as far as like the phone call and building tension with it. Like you almost at first think it's going to be her boyfriend that's prank calling her, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
We eventually see it wasn't her boyfriend, because the killer gets a hold of him, and but that's just kind of adds onto the layer of the shock value of it. Just seeing like building up, like, oh, this weird phone calls are going on, and no one at that point is familiar with the Scream voice. You know, it's not iconic at that point, and so there's a lot of mystery about what's going on. And bringing it back to what you said about maybe not like expecting something like a good example would be like an injury to maybe it's one of your best players, and now you got to step up. Next guy's got to step up, and maybe someone wasn't expecting that. Like maybe their attitude starts to dwindle because of that, and that starts to impact the team even more. And it's just like big picture is kind of how you respond to extrinsic things that you can't control. Like you got to be able to react to that, like you were saying.
And even then, just one last piece of the scene, because those are perfect. But you can even think about like things will happen. Like you got to be able to yell out for help. And I'm not just being like you're sad or depressed or anything. I just mean like things happen. Like you got to be able to yell for help, because she was trying to say help, but she couldn't really say help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And then they found her in the tree. So that's not good.
Yeah, parents pulled up on. I don't know what it is with these horror movies and parents pulling up on their kids like that. It's kind of messed up, honestly.
Two iconic opening scenes. So what does that move into next? What would be the next best scene to go about within that movie? I mean, then they know they're dead, and then the town's kind of talking about it. The one chick's, at some point it talks about her family at some point and the friends. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm having trouble.
The next thing I'm thinking of, at least big picture here that we can connect with, is like in the school, and people are like, half of them are making fun of it, of like the whole thing, but then all of a sudden, so like you have to battle adversity and things, like people are gonna be like, oh, that, because they were like, oh, it's probably the same person who killed your mom and yada yada, like they were the egging on chick. Adversity there, but sometimes like you gotta hold strong and hold true, because then it comes out the killer is in the school. Like sometimes you gotta just keep it going and stick true to what you believe and what you know, because it might not be easy, and then all of a sudden people will like kind of see what you're talking about, and they never even saw the killer in the school. But that's a big scene, at least in the movie. I don't really know how we tie it together, but that was my initial thought of, people are gonna give you crap and you gotta get through it, and then it still might not even be good. Like you'll still have more struggles and challenges and whatnot too. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of that scene.
It's not always about the loudest person in the room. It's about the most determined person.
Good quote.
I just thought of that. I don't know. It might be from something.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a quote, but people can quote you now. So they get rid of the school. They're taking her word. I don't know if anyone else saw the killer or not, or if she's just yelling, running down the hall. I forget. But the teacher, let's go to this teacher scene. This is almost like being fake. I feel like this is instant karma. The teacher, everyone else is happy they're out of school. They're like, no problem to worry about, which is going to come back and get them to some extent. But the teacher is putting on the mask, and he's just having fun in the mirror. And that's a funny actor too, nonetheless. But and then he gets what he deserves right away. I don't know exactly how to. I think that would be in the injury realm, or just in performance athletics. Like if you're messing around a little bit too much, you're testing the waters, testing your physical ability. All of a sudden, snap, you're done, out of there. Now you gotta. And in this guy's case, he does not come back from it. But in a physical injury, sometimes I guess maybe you can. But
yeah. Here, so I'm assuming he was stabbed.
Yeah, he was stabbed.
All right, yeah, for sure. So, just kind of tying it to something we were talking about today is Brown-Séquard syndrome is spinal cord injury that typically happens like a gunshot wound or being stabbed, and that involves like half of your sensation on one side of all of the neurons that are in your spinal cord. Not too keen on it right now. I've been in class all day.
Yeah, it's okay.
But it's interesting because this is getting way off topic. But like,
let's do it.
Just the way things can come in and like where things cross in the spinal cord to different areas, like the medulla or like the thalamus, or up in your cerebral cortex and the motor and sensory areas. It's a lot. It's pretty interesting. Like bringing it back to that, just how the spinal cord, how intricate it is, and how different things go to different places, and breaking it down, looking at that's pretty interesting. But yeah, you can have that happen to you if you get stabbed. Just something interesting.
So you're going spinal cord to hindbrain to midbrain to forebrain cerebral cortex, and I could go on the yeah, we're just not. We won't go into that, Trey. We could go more science stuff. I'd love to do it on stress and everything else. When we could, I mean, we could talk about that. Those guys were taking some stress, and those signals are going. But yeah, let's go. Let's go. Instant karma. Let's see. Next best thing. Next thing. I'm just thinking too. Instant karma of just like if you. I think it's even instant karma of when you're thinking some bad things. Not even bad things, but like oh dude, I don't know how good I'm gonna play or anything like that. Instant karma, you're not gonna play as good. Like you're
Yeah.
and I know there's studies that show this stuff too, where if you're thinking those kind of negative bad thoughts or like this guy was playing in the mirror with the mask, it's gonna come right at you. And that's what that shows personally.
Yeah, it's like he almost manifested his own demise, sort of thing.
Yeah. Um let's see. I mean, we don't have to we don't have to go to the very end of the movie and give that one away because I feel like we didn't give any of these movies away.
Yeah, I feel like I got something I could say, just kind of about the whole idea of Scream, like
Let's
the
say it.
movie itself.
Use that, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, okay. So I just like I think what I like about Scream is how it's somewhat a joke of itself, like of scary movies. You know, it doesn't take itself too serious throughout the movie. It's kind of satirical and like you never say I'll be back. I'll be right back in a horror movie, you know. And like you always see people saying, "Oh, I'll be right back," and then they get killed. Like there's just a lot of fun little moments there where the movie itself doesn't take it too seriously, but at the same time, the climax is just as tense as any other horror movie, and like the shock value of finding out who the killer is always a fun part of the Scream movies. But bringing it back to like into performance and stuff, I just think it's important to really not take yourself too serious. You know, like be able to joke with yourself, set your ego to the side. You know, have fun with what you're doing and ultimately you could still have a good outcome, like even if you're having fun with what you're doing, not taking it too serious. Like obviously you want to lock in, but you can't also like harbor on all the negatives and the bad things that happen, and like sometimes you're gonna have a bad performance and you gotta laugh it off and move on, you know.
Yeah, and that almost like yeah, that's perfect because it's also almost just like there's gonna be unexpected things that come up, and like I think what you just said of like the Scream movie, it does kind of have those unexpected horror kind of almost laughs behind it, like oh you expect this to happen because it's a horror movie. No, it doesn't happen that scene, but it happens like 5 minutes later. Like those
Right.
unexpected things that you might not that you don't think about in the performance, or like maybe in the performance you're not thinking, you're in the zone, but like to go into it and then totally other things happen, but ultimately you can still like win it. You can win at the end, and it's just maybe a different way to get to it. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Trey, honestly, this was really awesome. I don't know. Do you have like a final summary or wrap up to connect? And I know I didn't prep you on any of this. To connect like horror movies, these Halloween movies, to kind of just the performance realm of sports, of just kind of the mental performance side or the PT side. Because I feel like we had some big themes, kind of some crossover themes that came out of talking about these three movies that I didn't even fully expect. And I think we really tied it to stories pretty well. So if you had like one take home from this little thing that we did, I'd like to hear it. And then maybe I'll share one too, but then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll say maybe not hitting on any of the specific movies we talked about, but just like the whole genre as a whole. It's a great genre to watch to get your heart rate up, you know, kind of deal with some anxiety, some uncomfortable things, watching some uncomfortable scenes happen, not knowing what's going to happen next, experiencing that. I feel like all that's pretty valuable. I feel like that's a one of the reasons I've always kind of enjoyed scary movies, and I've always been drawn to them. And so if you can kind of, I don't know if you would just use that as like training per se, but understanding that watching a horror movie will get your heart rate up, you know, and it's going to have you deal with some uncomfortable things that's might be useful to translate, and maybe not just sport but life as a whole, you know, because something I've realized as I've gone on in my education background is like the whole like you always hear it when you're a kid as an athlete is like it's not about winning, it's not about losing, it's about preparing you for the future, and like in the moment no, it's about winning, But you see it now as you reflect, it's like, okay, yeah, I see how it was getting me ready for the future, and how a lot of the habits you have the opportunity to build when you're in a sport will translate into what you do as far as a profession or in anything, honestly. But yeah.
Dude, that was perfect. And I mean, I'll just go off that just a little bit more too, where I think, yeah, everything you said, I fully agree. And just the horror movies, Halloween time, it is just all about kind of the fear, the anxiety, stressful times. Just you got to sit through and you got to watch it, and there's not much you can do about it if you do put yourself in that situation. But that's kind of the same thing with peak performance and peak sports, because you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes you don't like the outcome. Like some of these movies, sometimes the outcome isn't like, you're like, nah, I wish that did not end like that. But sometimes that's just the way it goes. And like you said, you try to win and then you reflect too and just kind of see how much you got better from it. I think that was pretty good, Trey.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I had no idea how this was gonna go, but yeah, I feel like it's pretty solid.
No, me neither. I mean, I think it was fun. I think I think you know stories pretty well and these movies, but you know stories, and that's why I want to talk to you. And you know the research and the PT and everything else. So that's why I thought it'd be really cool. You got anything else you want to drop? Otherwise, like, how could people find you? I don't know how many people would want to talk to you, but I could see some like younger people, because I actually know some kids who were talking about PT, and they would maybe want to reach out to you and ask some stuff maybe about PT or just maybe horror movies. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, I'm not really on social media like that. I don't really post ever. But if you got anybody that is interested in like physical therapy, any questions, yeah, definitely send them my way. Give them
All right.
like my phone number, or
Yeah, I
Snapchat,
got
whatever
you.
you got to give them.
I
I'm
got
good
you.
with whatever, honestly.
Cool. All right, Trey.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Honestly, I was getting kind of salty you hadn't asked me to hop on yet. But
Well, I had to figure out the
happy to
right
do
time
it.
and the right way because,
Yeah, this is
I mean,
perfect. This is perfect time.
I
I'm
think
glad
this
you're
worked
ready.
out pretty well. So let me wrap it up. But the Athletes Health Podcast, talking to athletes, coaches, leaders, learn some mental tricks, tools, guide to you, PT student, guy who's trekking life, making some big things happen. And I think we made the horror movies Halloween special work like a charm. So that was awesome, Trey. Thanks. And I appreciate it, my guy.